The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and life. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi have served as its guardians, interpreting its will and maintaining balance. But what happens when something arrives from beyond the stars, something that wields power the Force cannot touch, cannot predict, cannot contain? The battle over Christophsis had raged for 3 standard days. Republic Venator-class star destroyers exchanged turbolaser fire with separatist frigates, while starfighters danced between them in deadly spirals of light and plasma. On the planet's surface, white-armored clone troopers pushed against endless waves of battle droids, their survival measured in meters gained and brothers lost. Then the sky split open. It wasn't a hyperspace reversion, no ship emerged from that tear in reality. It was light itself, prismatic and impossible. A column of rainbow energy that burned through the void like a spear thrown by gods. The phenomenon lasted 3 seconds. Every sensor on every ship registered the same reading. Null data. Gravitational anomaly. Electromagnetic cascade. Reality. Error. When the light faded, something fell. He plummeted through Christophsis' atmosphere, trailing lightning and thunder, a figure in armor that gleamed red and silver, a crimson cape whipping behind him like a banner of war. In his hand, he gripped a weapon, hammer-shaped, etched with runes that glowed with their own inner light, crackling with electrical fury that had nothing to do with atmospheric re-entry. The figure didn't fall so much as descend with terrible purpose. At the last moment, mere meters from impact with the crystal canyons below, he arrested his momentum. Suspended in midair by forces unknown, he surveyed the battlefield with eyes that sparked blue with power. Thor Odinson, son of Odin, god of thunder and prince of Asgard, had arrived in a galaxy far, far away. Below him, the battle had frozen. Clone troopers stared upward, weapons half raised, battle droids locked in place, their rudimentary processors unable to categorize what they witnessed. Even the Jedi leading the Republic forces, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, stood motionless, their connection to the Force suddenly screaming warnings they didn't understand. Thor's senses reeled. The Bifrost had never felt like that, chaotic, violent, wrong. One moment he'd been in need of Elir, the next this. He could still feel the residual energy crackling through Stormbreaker, but everything else felt alien. The air tasted different. The stars overhead were wrong. And there was something else. Something he could sense but not name, a field of energy that touched everything, everyone, like invisible threads connecting all living things. His Asgardian instincts warned him. This was not Midgard. This was not any of the 9 realms. A barrage of red bolts screamed toward him. Thor's combat reflexes, honed over 1,500 years of battle, took over. Stormbreaker moved in a blur, deflecting the energy blasts with its flat side. The bolts ricocheted into a nearby droid battalion, cutting through metal bodies like they were parchment. "Cease fire!" A voice commanded from below, human, male, carrying authority. "All units, hold position." Thor descended slowly, boots touching down on crystalline ground. The weapon fire had come from the mechanical soldiers' droids, his mind supplied, though he'd never seen their like. They were roughly humanoid, skeletal things that moved with eerie precision. Surrounding them were human soldiers in white armor that covered them head to toe, their weapons trained on him with disciplined wariness. 2 figures pushed through the clone ranks. They wore robes, one in Jedi browns, the other in darker tones, and both carried cylinders of metal at their belts. When they moved with the grace of warriors. But there was something else. That energy field, that invisible connection, it flowed through them like water through riverbeds. The younger one, dark-haired with a scar over his right eye, spoke first. "I am Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight of the Republic. This is Master Obi-Wan Kenobi." His hand hovered near his belt cylinder. "You're not with the Separatists. So, who are you? And how did you do that?" Thor straightened to his full height, letting Stormbreaker rest against his shoulder. Lightning still danced along its blade edges, reflecting off his armor. Around him, he could feel hundreds of eyes watching, waiting. The tension was palpable. One wrong word, and this would turn into bloodshed. "I am Thor, son of Odin," he declared, his voice carrying across the sudden silence of the battlefield. "Prince of Asgard, wielder of Mjolnir," he caught himself, "of Stormbreaker, and protector of the Nine Realms." He gestured at the sky where the Bifrost had deposited him. "Though it seems the Bifrost has cast me far from home." The bearded one, Obi-Wan, exchanged a glance with his companion. Thor recognized that look. He'd seen it countless times across countless worlds. The look of men trying to decide if they faced friend, foe, or madman. "Prince of where?" Anakin asked carefully. "I've never heard of Asgard. And the Republic star charts don't have any record of a Nine Realms." Thor's jaw tightened. The implications crashed over him like a Jotunheim avalanche. Different stars, different worlds. The Bifrost had done more than transport him. It had hurled him across the very boundaries of reality itself. He was alone. Impossibly, terrifyingly alone. But he was still Thor. And wherever warriors fought, wherever tyranny threatened innocence, he would stand and fight. It was who he was. "Then it seems," Thor said, blue lightning crackling in his eyes, "that I have much to learn about this realm, and you, Jedi, have much to learn about me. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you." The command tent thrummed with tension. Holographic displays cast blue light across tactical maps, showing Christophsis's crystal canyons and the separatist positions entrenched within them. Clone officers monitored communications while Anakin and Obi-Wan stood opposite their unexpected guest, their lightsabers remaining unignited but within easy reach. Thor studied the technology around him with undisguised curiosity. Asgard possessed advanced science. The Bifrost itself was proof of that, but this was different. Holographic projections, energy weapons, ships that traveled between stars. This civilization had clearly mastered forces beyond what most of the Nine Realms achieved. "You're telling us," Obi-Wan said carefully, stroking his beard, "that you're from another dimension entirely. That this Bifrost is a bridge between worlds, and it malfunctioned during transport." "I'm telling you what happened," Thor replied, his tone carrying the patience of someone who delivered countless battle reports. "The Bifrost opened. Something interfered with the passage. And I emerged here, in your sky, above your war." He set Stormbreaker on the tactical table. Several clones tensed immediately, and the weapon hummed with barely contained power. "I have fought in 9 campaigns across the realms. I know dimensional travel when I experience it." Anakin circled the weapon slowly, his hand outstretched, but not quite touching. Thor felt something, that same invisible energy field radiating from the young Jedi's palm. Probing, questioning, it reminded him of Heimdall's all-seeing gaze, but more intrusive. "I can't sense anything from it," Anakin murmured. "It's like it's not even there in the Force, but I can see it clear as day." His eyes narrowed. "And you're different too. You're alive, but the Force around you is strange, distorted." "The Force?" Thor's eyebrow arched. "Is that what I've been sensing? The energy that connects everything here?" Obi-Wan's expression shifted from suspicion to intrigue. "You can sense the Force, but you're not Force-sensitive, at least, not like anyone I've encountered. Where I come from, we have different names for cosmic energies," Thor explained. "The Aesir have studied the fabric of reality for millennia. What you call the Force, we might call the World Tree's essence, or the fundamental threads of Yggdrasil." He picked up Stormbreaker again, and lightning danced between his fingers. "My power comes from within, from what I am, not from drawing on external sources." A clone commander approached, his armor marked with blue accents. "Generals, the separatist forces are regrouping. They saw what happened in the sky. They're requesting a ceasefire to discuss terms." "Terms?" Anakin scoffed. "Since when do the separatists want to negotiate?" "Since we dropped a lightning god into the middle of their invasion," Obi-Wan observed dryly. He turned back to Thor. "Tell me, Prince of Asgard, what do you fight for? What are your beliefs? Thor met his gaze steadily. I fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. I stand against tyrants and monsters. I protect the innocent and honor the worthy. His grip tightened on Stormbreaker. If your republic holds these values, then we may find common cause. If not, he let the implication hang. The Republic is the legitimate government of this galaxy, Obi-Wan said, though Thor detected a note of weariness beneath the conviction. We're fighting the Separatist Alliance systems that have rebelled against lawful authority and seek to fragment the galaxy through violence. And these Separatists, Thor asked, what do they claim as their cause? Anakin's jaw clenched. They claim the Republic is corrupt, that the Senate has become bloated and ineffective. They're backed by mega corporations and a Sith Lord named Count Dooku. Sith? Thor interrupted. What manner of creature is that? Dark side Force users, Obi-Wan explained. The ancient enemies of the Jedi. They embrace passion, hatred, and power for power's sake. 2,000 years ago, we thought them destroyed. We were wrong. Thor absorbed this. Light and dark, order and chaos, familiar concepts across every realm he'd known. But something nagged at him. These soldiers outside, the ones in white armor, they all bear the same face, the same voice. Are they brothers? The two Jedi exchanged uncomfortable glances. They're clones, Anakin said finally. Created from a single template, a bounty hunter named Jango Fett. Bred and trained for war from birth. They're the Republic's army. Thor's expression darkened. The temperature in the tent seemed to drop, and ozone filled the air. Created? Bred for war? His voice carried thunder's edge. You speak of them as weapons, not warriors. They are weapons, Anakin said, though his tone suggested he disliked saying it. The finest soldiers in the galaxy. Loyal, disciplined, effective. They are slaves. Thor's words fell like hammerstones. Born into bondage, given no choice but to fight and die for causes they did not choose. They have honor, Obi-Wan countered, defensive now. They serve willingly. They're more than their programming. They serve because they were given no alternative. Thor's eyes blazed with literal lightning. I have seen what becomes of societies that build themselves on the backs of the enslaved. They rot from within, no matter how noble their stated cause. Anakin's hand moved to his lightsaber hilt. You just arrived here. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Thor hefted Stormbreaker. And the weapon crackled with building energy. I understand that you wage war using soldiers who cannot refuse orders, cannot leave, cannot choose their own fates. Tell me, Jedi, what separates you from the tyrants you claim to fight? The question hung in the recycled air like an executioner's blade. Outside, another clone officer appeared at the tent entrance. Generals, the Separatist representatives are approaching under white flag. They're asking to meet with the one who fell from the sky. Obi-Wan's hand remained on his lightsaber. It could be a trap, or, Thor said, the lightning fading from his eyes, an opportunity to understand this war before I choose which side deserves my hammer. He moved toward the exit, then paused. I will hear what they have to say. And then, Jedi, I will decide whether this republic of yours is worth defending. He strode out into the harsh Christophsis sunlight, leaving two of the galaxy's greatest Jedi Knights standing in troubled silence, wondering if they'd just encountered their greatest asset or their most dangerous liability. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant rose above the city planet, like a mountain of ancient authority. Its spires pierced the smog-choked sky, and within its council chamber, 12 of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy convened via hologram to discuss a being who defied everything they understood. Master Yoda sat in contemplation, his ancient eyes closed. Master Mace Windu stood with arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. Around them, the blue-tinted holograms of other council members flickered. Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, Kit Fisto, and others, all waiting for Obi-Wan's full report. Unpredictable, he is, Yoda said finally, his ears drooping with concern. A disturbance in the Force. his arrival caused. But of the dark side, he is not. He's not of the light side either, Mace countered. I've reviewed the recordings. His power doesn't draw from the Force at all. It's something else entirely. Obi-Wan's hologram shifted uncomfortably. He calls himself a god, master. And after witnessing what he can do, I'm not certain he's exaggerating. He survived atmospheric entry without a ship. His weapon, this Stormbreaker, channels lightning that reads as pure energy, not Force lightning. And he lifted a Separatist AAT tank with one hand. A god, Ki Adimundi repeated skeptically. There are no gods, only the Force. Tell him that. Anakin's hologram interjected. He seemed pretty convinced. And he's not happy about the clone army. Called them slaves to our faces. A troubled silence fell over the council. Insightful. Perhaps his observation is, Yoda murmured. Uncomfortable truths outsiders often see. The clones serve willingly, Mace said, though his tone lacked its usual certainty. We didn't create them. We inherited an army already grown. An army commissioned by a dead Jedi Master under suspicious circumstances, Obi-Wan added quietly. Thor's criticism, while bluntly delivered, isn't without merit. This Thor, Plo Koon's modulated voice came through. Did he engage the Separatist delegation? He did, Obi-Wan confirmed. Against our advice, he met with their representative, a tactical droid, and some corporate alliance officials. They offered him wealth, territory, and promises of freedom from Republic oppression. He declined, but Obi-Wan hesitated. He didn't reject their characterization of the Republic either. He said he'd withhold judgment. Dangerous, this neutrality could prove, Yoda warned. In war, fence-sitters often fall. Across the city, in the Chancellor's office, Palpatine watched a different recording. The ornate chamber overlooked Coruscant's endless sprawl, but the Chancellor's attention remained fixed on the holographic footage of Thor's arrival. He watched it loop 3 times, his aged face betraying nothing. Mas Amedda, his Chagrian aide, stood nearby. The Jedi Council is convening about him now, Chancellor. They're concerned. As well they should be, Palpatine said softly. His voice carried grandfatherly warmth, but his eyes remained cold as vacuum. A being of immense power appears from nowhere, beholden to no one, unreadable through the Force. Tell me, Mas, where does he fit in the careful balance we've maintained? He doesn't, the aide replied. He's a variable lord. Mas caught himself. The Separatists have already tried recruiting him. If he joins them, he won't, Palpatine interrupted. Men like this Thor are predictable in their unpredictability. They serve abstractions, honor, justice, protection of the weak. Such idealism. He said it like a curse. No, he won't join the Separatists, but he may not join the Republic either, and that presents complications. Should Count Dooku be informed? Dooku already knows. I felt his interest through our connection the moment this Asgardian arrived. Palpatine's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. My apprentice sees opportunity. I see danger. Danger, my lord? The Clone Wars proceed, according to design, Palpatine explained, moving to the window. Every battle, every death, every emergency power granted to this office, all calculated, all necessary. The Jedi grow more militarized. The Republic's citizens grow more fearful. The Senate grants me broader authority. His reflection in the glass showed a face shadowed with dark intent. But this Thor? He serves no one's design but his own. He could end battles I need prolonged. He could save Jedi I need eliminated. He could inspire hope in populations I need desperate. What will you do? For now? Nothing. Palpatine turned from the window. Let the Jedi Council debate his trustworthiness. Let them test him, question him, try to understand him. The more they focus on Thor, the less they notice the shadows closing around them. He moved to his desk, ancient and heavy with authority. But alert our agents. Have them monitor this god closely. And inform Lord Tyrannus that the Asgardian is not to be engaged directly. Not yet. And if he interferes with the war effort? Palpatine's eyes flashed yellow for just an instant before returning to their grandfatherly blue. Then we'll remind him why gods fall. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. We should bring him to Coruscant, Mace proposed. Test him properly. Determine his allegiances. Treat him as suspect. We should not, Yoda countered. Done nothing against the Republic? He has. Saved clone lives on Christophsis, the reports say. He also saved battle droids, Ki-Adi-Mundi pointed out. When both sides fired on him, he disabled combatants on both sides equally. He shows no preference. Perhaps that's wise, Obi-Wan suggested. We involve the Jedi Order in politics and military command. Thor hasn't chosen a side because he doesn't understand the conflict yet. Can we blame him for caution? We can't afford his caution, Mace said bluntly. The Separatists grow bolder every day. If Thor's power could turn the tide of battles, the Republic needs him committed. Uncommitted, he's a liability. Send Skywalker, Kit Fisto suggested. Thor seemed to respect him, at least. Perhaps Anakin can convince him that the Republic fights for legitimate causes. Terrible idea, that is, Yoda said flatly. Skywalker's own doubts about the Council, well known they are. Send him to convince another? The ancient master's ears twitched. No. Patience, we need. Watch Thor, we will. Guide him if possible. But force his hand? Yoda's eyes opened fully. Ancient and knowing. Push too hard. And gods push back. The council continued debating, weighing options, calculating risks. None of them could see what Yoda sensed, but could not quite articulate a shift in the cosmic balance. Subtle as a breath, but profound as a planet's orbit changing. Thor's arrival had introduced something new into the galaxy's fate, something the Force itself struggled to interpret. And in that struggle lay either salvation or catastrophe. The Council would watch Thor carefully, test his allegiances, probe his intentions. But while they watched the God of Thunder, they failed to notice the storm of another kind. The one Palpatine had been orchestrating for decades. The one that would soon sweep them all away. The barracks on Christophsis smelled of recycled air, ozone from discharged blasters, and something Thor recognized from 1,000 battlefields across the 9 realms, the scent of warriors living in proximity to death. He walked between rows of bunks where clone troopers sat cleaning weapons, checking armor seals, and speaking in low voices. They all turned to watch him pass. Identical faces beneath identical haircuts, some bearing scars that marked them as individuals, despite their manufactured origins. Thor had requested this visit over Anakin's objections. If he was to understand this war, he needed to understand those who fought it. A clone with a distinctive blue handprint on his chest plate approached. Sir, I'm Captain Rex. General Skywalker said you wanted to speak with us? I did, Thor confirmed. You lead these men? I do, sir. 501st Legion, Torrent Company. Rex's voice carried professional pride. Is there something specific you need? Thor gestured to the surrounding clones. I wish to know them. In Asgard, I fought alongside the Einherjar warriors who chose battle, who earned their place in our halls through valor and courage. You were given no such choice. Yet you fight with equal dedication. I would understand why. Rex's expression, what Thor could see of it beneath the helmet, shifted to something between confusion and respect. We're soldiers, sir. It's what we're made for. Made for, Thor repeated. Not born to. Made. Does this not trouble you? A nearby trooper with orange shoulder pauldrons spoke up. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted, Thor said immediately. We're clones. Yeah, we didn't ask to be created. But we're here now, and we're good at what we do. The trooper, his helmet bore the designation, hard case, stood straighter. Maybe we didn't choose this life, but we choose how we live it. We choose to protect the Republic. We choose to follow the Jedi. We choose to stand for our brothers. Well spoken, Thor acknowledged. But tell me what happens when the war ends. What becomes of an army bred only for battle when peace arrives? Silence fell across the barracks. Clones exchanged glances. Several removed their helmets, revealing faces identical, yet somehow distinct in their expressions. Scars, tattoos, different hairstyles that marked them as individuals despite their common origin. Rex finally answered, his voice quiet. We don't think about that much, sir. Most of us don't expect to survive that long anyway. The casual fatalism in that statement struck Thor like a hammer blow. These warriors, brave, skilled, loyal, expected nothing beyond death in service. No retirement, no families, no futures. Just war until they fell. That, Thor said, his voice carrying thunder's edge, is the greatest crime of all. He moved deeper into the barracks, and the clones parted before him. He stopped at a card game where 4 troopers sat around a makeshift table. What are your names? Fives? Sir, one said. Echo, another added. Kix, and that's Jesse. And before you were soldiers? Thor asked. What were your dreams? The question clearly confused them. Fives tilted his head. Before? There was no before, sir. We were flash-trained from childhood. Grew up on Camino. Learned to fight. Got deployed. No childhood? Thor's fists clenched. No play, no exploration, no freedom to discover who you were beyond weapons and tactics? We had training simulations, Echo offered helpfully. Some were pretty fun, actually. Thor closed his eyes briefly. In Asgard, even in Jotunheim, even among the Dark Elves, children were children first, warriors second. They played, they learned, they chose. These clones had been robbed of something fundamental, and they didn't even realize it. Kix, who had medic markings on his armor, spoke thoughtfully. You seem angry on our behalf, sir. But we're okay with what we are. We've got purpose. We've got brothers. That's more than nothing. It's less than everything, Thor countered. You deserve more. Respectfully, sir, Rex interjected. You sound like the separatist propaganda. They claim we're slaves, that the Republic uses us as meat shields. But they use battle droids, machines with no thoughts or feelings. At least we matter to the Jedi. At least our lives mean something. Your lives should mean everything, Thor said fiercely. Not just as soldiers, but as men. As individuals with hopes and desires beyond the next battle. He looked around at the assembled clones. I have fought in 9 campaigns across worlds you cannot imagine. I have led armies and stood alone against impossible odds. And I tell you truly, the measure of a civilization is not how well it wages war, but how well it treats its warriors when the fighting stops. A new voice spoke from the barracks entrance. Inspiring speech. Anakin leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. But you're upsetting my men with questions about futures they've never considered. Perhaps they should consider them, Thor replied evenly. Anakin pushed off the wall and approached. Around them, clones stood at attention, an automatic response that made Thor's jaw tighten further. The clones are heroes of the Republic, Anakin said. They've saved countless lives, including mine more times than I can count. Yes, their origins are complicated. But they're here now, and they choose to fight for something greater than themselves. Do they choose? Thor challenged. Or have they been conditioned from birth to believe they have no other purpose? You want to know about choices? Anakin's voice carried an edge now. The temperature in the barracks seemed to rise. I was a slave once. A real slave. Owned by a junk dealer on Tatooine. The Jedi freed me. They gave me purpose, training, a chance to help people across the galaxy. The clones have more freedom than I ever did as a child. Thor studied the young Jedi with new understanding. Then you, of all people, should recognize bondage, when you see it, even bondage disguised as duty. The two locked eyes, God and Jedi, both warriors, both survivors of suffering, both absolutely certain of their righteousness. Rex stepped between them carefully. Sirs, the men need rest before tomorrow's offensive. Perhaps this conversation could continue elsewhere? Thor nodded slowly. You are right. Captain, I apologize for disturbing your troops. He turned to leave, then paused. Tell me one thing, Rex. If the war ended tomorrow, and you could choose any life, any purpose beyond soldiering, what would you choose? Rex hesitated, his helmet in his hands, his face showing genuine confusion. I don't know, sir. I've never thought about it. Then think about it, Thor said quietly. Because warriors who fight without knowing what they're fighting for or what they're fighting to become are merely weapons. And weapons, Captain, can be turned by those who wield them. He left the barracks in heavy silence, aware of dozens of identical faces watching him go, processing questions they'd never been designed to ask. Behind him, Anakin stood among the clones, troubled thoughts swirling behind his eyes, wondering if the Asgardians' words had revealed truths the Jedi Order was too blind to see. The Separatist flagship Invincible hung in orbit above Christophsis, like a predator circling wounded prey. In its command chamber, Count Dooku stood with hands clasped behind his back, watching holographic tactical displays with the patience of a man who'd orchestrated conflicts across dozens of star systems. He was not alone. The Republic fleet repositions, General Grievous rasped, his cybernetic body clicking and whirring with each movement. The Kaleesh cyborg general leaned over the tactical display, his 4 arms currently folded in pairs. They fortify the surface installations. Standard defensive posture. Standard, Dooku agreed, except for one significant variable. He gestured, and the hologram shifted to show footage of Thor's arrival. The Rainbow Bridge, the lightning, the raw power that had stopped both armies in their tracks. This Asgardian troubles me, General. He is powerful beyond conventional measure, and more importantly, he is unpredictable. Then I shall kill him, Grievous stated flatly. My forces can overwhelm any single combatant. That is precisely the thinking that has cost you battles against individual Jedi, Dooku observed coolly. No, we will not attack Thor directly. Not yet. First, we shall speak with him. Grievous's mechanical laugh scraped like metal on stone. The Republic's Jedi have already tried recruiting him. What makes you believe he'll listen to us? Because, unlike the Jedi, we won't insult his intelligence with platitudes about peace and justice. Dooku's aristocratic features settled into an expression of calm certainty. We'll offer him truth. 3 hours later, a Separatist shuttle descended toward Christophsis under official diplomatic clearance. The Republic forces watched with weapons ready, but held their fire. Aboard the shuttle, Count Dooku reviewed his approach one final time. The shuttle landed in neutral territory, a crystal canyon halfway between Republic and Separatist lines. Thor waited there alone, Stormbreaker resting against his shoulder, lightning playing across its surface in anticipation. The shuttle's ramp lowered, and Dooku descended with the bearing of nobility, his curved lightsaber hilt visible but untouched at his belt. Prince Thor of Asgard. Dooku greeted with a slight bow. I am Count Dooku of Sereno. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. You requested dialogue, Thor replied, his eyes tracking every movement. I grant it, but know that if you intend treachery, you will discover why my father conquered 9 realms. I intend nothing but conversation, Dooku assured him. Tell me, what have the Jedi told you about this war? That you are Sith. That you embrace darkness and seek power through passion and hatred. That you lead a rebellion of corporations seeking to fragment the galaxy for profit. Thor's expression remained neutral. They painted you as tyrants and villains. And what did you observe of them? That they lead an army of manufactured soldiers bred for war. That they serve a republic they admit is corrupt and inefficient. That they speak of peace while commanding millions in battle. Thor's eyes narrowed. They too have shadows beneath their light. Dooku smiled thinly. Perceptive. May I show you something? He activated a small holographic projector. Images filled the air between them. The Senate chamber, on Coruscant, bloated and ineffectual. Debates stretching for weeks while systems suffered. Corporate titans bribing senators openly. Jedi serving as generals despite their claims of peacekeeping. The Republic's outer rim territories neglected and exploited. The Republic is dying, Dooku said quietly. Not from external threats, but from internal decay. The Senate has become a circus where corporations buy influence and entire sectors are ignored if they lack economic value. The Jedi, once guardians of peace, now serve as the Senate's enforcers and the Chancellor's generals. They have become the very thing they swore to stand against: warriors serving political masters. Thor watched the images in silence, his expression unreadable. The Confederacy of Independent Systems, what they call separatists, seeks only to break free from this corrupt system. Dooku continued. We want the freedom to govern ourselves, to protect our own people, to forge our own destinies. Is this not a cause worthy of support? Perhaps, Thor acknowledged. But you lead this righteous cause. You, who the Jedi call Sith, a fallen Jedi who embraced the dark side. Why should I trust that your cause is genuine and not merely ambition wearing rebellion's mask? Dooku had expected this. Because I was once where you stand now, an outsider viewing the Jedi with fresh eyes. I saw their hypocrisy, their rigid dogma, their willingness to compromise their principles for political expedience. I sought change from within and was rejected. So I seek it from without. Through war, Thor said. Through droid armies that slaughter clone soldiers who had no choice in their creation. Through war that the Republic perpetuates, Dooku countered. We've offered peace terms 17 times. The Chancellor refuses every offer. He needs this war. It grants him emergency powers. It justifies expanding his authority. It keeps the population afraid and compliant. Tell me, Prince Thor, who truly benefits from endless conflict? The question hung between them like a blade. Thor's grip on Stormbreaker tightened, lightning crackling in response to his troubled thoughts. You speak truth mixed with lies, Thor said finally. The Republic is corrupt. I have seen it in how they treat their soldiers. But your Confederacy is no better. You claim to fight for freedom, yet your armies destroy civilian populations. You claim moral high ground, yet you employ battle droids that kill without mercy or discrimination. Droids that cannot feel pain or fear, Dooku replied smoothly. Unlike the Republic's clone slaves who bleed and die in their millions. Which is truly more humane machines fulfilling their function or sentient beings bred to die? Thor had no immediate answer. The question cut too close to his own observations. Dooku pressed forward. I'm not asking you to join the Confederacy, Thor. I'm asking you to see the truth: this war has no heroes. Only those who profit from suffering and those who suffer for profit. The Jedi tell you they fight for peace, but they perpetuate war. The Republic claims to defend freedom while enslaving millions. And the Chancellor? Dooku's expression darkened. The Chancellor is far more dangerous than either side realizes. What do you mean? I mean that this war serves purposes neither Jedi nor Confederacy fully understand. Powers move in shadows that even I cannot fully perceive. For just a moment, genuine concern crossed Dooku's aristocratic features. You are a god, Thor. You see beyond mortal limitations. Can you not sense that something greater orchestrates these events? That every battle, every casualty, serves some hidden design? Thor did sense something: that pervasive energy field, the Force, carried currents he couldn't fully read. There were depths to this conflict that went beyond politics and territory. If what you say is true, Thor said slowly, then both sides are being manipulated. The question is by whom, and toward what end? The right questions at last, Dooku said with satisfaction. I don't have all the answers, but I know this. The galaxy needs warriors like you who think beyond allegiance, who see clearly, who cannot be corrupted or controlled. He took a step closer. Help me find the truth, Thor, not as Republic ally or Confederacy servant, but as an independent force seeking to expose the real enemy. It was a masterful performance: truth and manipulation, so skillfully blended that even Thor's centuries of experience struggled to separate them. Dooku believed much of what he said, which made the lies more convincing. I will consider your words, Thor said finally. But know this, Count, I serve no faction that harms innocents. If your confederacy continues to wage war against civilian populations, you'll find my hammer turned against you, regardless of your philosophy. Fair enough, Dooku agreed. He bowed again. Think on what I've said. And when you're ready to seek real answers, to understand who truly pulls the strings in this conflict, contact me. The Confederacy would welcome an ally who cannot be manipulated by the Force. The Count returned to his shuttle, leaving Thor standing alone in the Crystal Canyon, troubled questions swirling through his mind like storm clouds. High above, in the Invincible, Grievous watched the meeting's conclusion. He did not agree to join us. He didn't refuse either, Dooku replied. And more importantly, I've planted doubt. Doubt in the Jedi. Doubt in the Republic. Doubt in the war itself. He smiled coldly. Sometimes, the greatest victory is making your enemy question everything they believe. Thor stood on the observation deck of the Republic cruiser Resolute, watching star systems blur past through the viewport. 3 weeks had passed since his arrival. 3 weeks spent traveling with Anakin's fleet from one battlefield to another. Christophsis, Ryloth, Malastare, each world bore the scars of conflict. Each population caught between Republic and Separatist forces, like grain between millstones. The door hissed open behind him. He didn't turn, already recognizing the footsteps lighter than a clone's armored tread, purposeful yet cautious. "You're brooding again," Ahsoka Tano said, moving to stand beside him. The young Togruta Padawan had spent more time with Thor than most, perhaps because she asked questions rather than making assumptions. "Master Anakin says, brooding is a waste of time. Your master broods constantly," Thor observed with a slight smile. "He simply calls it thinking strategically." Ahsoka grinned. "Don't tell him I agree with you." Her expression sobered as she followed his gaze to the stars. "We'll reach Bothawui in 6 hours. Intelligence says a Separatist fleet is planning to strike the shipyards there. If they succeed, the Republic loses a major production facility. And if we succeed in defending it?" Thor asked quietly. "We save thousands of workers and keep vital ships out of Separatist hands. And the battle will cost how many clone lives?" Ahsoka's jaw tightened. "That's war. People die. People who volunteered, yes. People who accepted the risks of combat, certainly." Thor turned to face her fully. "But what of those who were born into war, given no alternative?" "Ahsoka, I have fought alongside your clone soldiers. They are brave, honorable, skilled. They deserve better than to be expendable." "They're not expendable," she protested, but her voice carried uncertainty. "The Jedi care about the clones. We don't throw their lives away. Yet, you accept their creation. Their conditioning. Their complete lack of choice in serving." Thor's tone wasn't accusatory, merely stating facts. "On Asgard, we have a saying. A warrior who fights for others must first be free themselves." The Padawan had no response. She looked away, conflict evident in her expression. "The Separatist Count made similar arguments," Thor continued. "He claimed the Republic perpetuates this war, that both sides serve hidden masters. I dismissed much of what he said as manipulation, but some truths resonated." He paused. "How many battles have you fought, Ahsoka?" "Dozens, maybe more. And how many have achieved lasting peace?" Silence. "We win battles," she finally said. "We push the Separatists back. We protect Republic territories. And they push back, and you defend again. And the war continues." Thor crossed his arms. "In my realm, we call this a blood spiral conflict that feeds itself, that grows larger with each battle until it consumes everything. Someone benefits from this spiral, Ahsoka. Someone wants this war to continue." "That's ridiculous," she said, but doubt crept into her voice. "The Republic wants peace. The Jedi want peace. Then why hasn't peace come?" The question hit like a physical blow. Ahsoka opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It's complicated. The Separatists won't negotiate in good faith. They keep attacking. As do you. We're defending. Are you? Thor gestured toward the viewport, where another star system approached. I have accompanied your forces to 6 worlds now. On each, I've watched Republic and Separatist forces clash over strategic resources. Factories, mines, trade routes. Not once have I seen battle over principles or ideals. Only territory and production capability. That's not fair, Ahsoka argued. We defend people, not just resources. You defend people who live near resources, Thor corrected gently. I have heard your briefings. Systems without strategic value receive minimal protection. Entire sectors are abandoned if defending them proves too costly. Tell me, is this the behavior of guardians or of generals fighting a territorial war? Ahsoka's headtails twitched with agitation. You don't understand. The Republic is stretched thin. We can't be everywhere. We have to prioritize. I understand perfectly. I also understand that such prioritization makes you warriors of politics, not warriors of justice. Thor's expression softened. You are young. Ahsoka, idealistic. You believe in the Jedi Order and the Republic they serve. But I have lived 1,500 years and fought wars across 9 realms. I recognize patterns. What patterns? Wars that serve no one but those who orchestrate them. Conflicts carefully managed to achieve specific ends. Suffering prolonged because someone profits from prolonging it. He turned back to the viewport. Your Count Dooku suggested that hidden forces manipulate this war. I begin to think he spoke truth, even if he himself is part of the manipulation. The door opened again. Anakin entered, his expression hard. We're getting reports from Botha-Wui. The Separatist fleet arrived early. They're already engaging the defense forces. We need to move now. Prepare your forces, Thor said. I will fight with you. You sure? Anakin asked. You've been questioning everything we do for weeks. Thought maybe you decided we weren't worth defending. I question your methods and your masters, Thor replied evenly. I do not question that those shipyard workers deserve protection from battle droids. There are innocents at stake. And where innocents suffer, I will stand and fight, even if the cause that endangers them is morally compromised. Anakin's eyes narrowed. We're the good guys, Thor. Maybe not perfect, but we're fighting for freedom and democracy. So you tell yourself, Thor said, but he moved toward the door. Come. Whatever my doubts about this war, those workers don't deserve to die today. They rushed toward the hangar bay. Clone troopers already boarding gunships for the assault. Captain Rex saluted as they approached. All units ready, General. We hit the atmosphere in 12 minutes. Thor watched the clones, Rex, Fives, Echo, Jesse, and dozens more whose names he'd learned preparing for battle with professional efficiency. They checked weapons, sealed armor, encouraged brothers. They were good men, brave men, who deserved better than this endless war. Rex, Thor called. The captain turned. When this battle ends, what comes next? Next? Rex seemed confused by the question. Next, we regroup, repair, and wait for orders to the next battlefront. No rest, no recognition, no pause. We're soldiers, sir. Rest comes when the war's over. And if the war never ends, Rex's expression darkened behind his helmet, then I guess we fight until we fall, sir. Thor nodded slowly. That is what I thought. What I feared. He looked at Anakin. You ask why I question. This is why. You lead men who expect nothing beyond death and service, and you accept this as normal. It's war, Anakin said quietly. Nobody said it was fair. No, Thor agreed, hefting Stormbreaker as the gunship's engines roared to life. But someone should have said it was wrong. The hangar bay opened to the void, and gunships launched toward Botha-Wui, toward another battle, another count of casualties, another victory that would change nothing. Thor flew alongside them, lightning crackling around his form, protecting warriors who'd been denied the choice to be anything else. And in the depths of space, unseen by Jedi or clone or god, the true architects of the Clone Wars watched and calculated, adjusting their designs to account for this unexpected variable, who questioned too much and saw too clearly. The war continued. The blood spiral turned. And Thor began to understand that winning battles might mean nothing if the war itself was the true enemy. The Senate building on Coruscant dominated the cityscape like a monument to bureaucratic power. Its circular architecture spoke of unity and equality, but within its halls, Chancellor Palpatine wielded authority that would have made ancient emperors envious. Thor stood in the Chancellor's office, having been summoned under the pretense of official recognition for services to the Republic. He'd accepted out of curiosity, and because Obi-Wan had insisted it would be diplomatically appropriate. Palpatine rose from behind his desk with the slow movements of aged frailty. His smile was grandfatherly, his eyes warm with apparent sincerity. "Prince Thor, welcome. Please, sit. Can I offer you refreshment?" "I require nothing but answers, Chancellor," Thor replied, remaining standing. Stormbreaker hung at his belt, a visible reminder of his power. "You rule this republic. Explain to me why this war continues." The Chancellor's smile never wavered, though something flickered in his eyes, calculation, perhaps, or amusement. "Direct. I appreciate that. Too often, beings approach me with false courtesy and hidden agendas." He moved to the window overlooking Coruscant's endless sprawl. "The war continues because the Separatists refuse peace. They reject compromise, attack our citizens, and seek to fragment the galaxy. We defend ourselves." "Count Dooku claims he's offered peace terms 17 times, Thor countered. "He says you've rejected every offer." "Count Dooku is a liar and a Sith Lord," Palpatine said, his voice carrying sudden steel. "His peace terms demand Republic capitulation, surrender of systems, recognition of Separatist sovereignty over territories seized by force, reparations for damages they themselves caused. These aren't peace terms, they're demands for unconditional surrender." Thor studied the Chancellor carefully. Unlike with Dooku or the Jedi, that pervasive force energy around Palpatine felt strange, muted, somehow, as if wrapped in layers he couldn't penetrate. It reminded him of Loki's illusion, something hidden beneath a carefully maintained surface. "Both sides claim righteousness," Thor observed. "Both sides accuse the other of perpetuating conflict. Someone lies. Perhaps both do. Perhaps both believe their own truth," Palpatine suggested. "War rarely has clear villains, Prince Thor. Only opposing interests and tragic necessity." He returned to his desk, moving with that deceptive frailty. "But I sense your questions run deeper than politics. What truly troubles you?" "The clones," Thor said bluntly. "An army of sentient beings bred for war, conditioned from birth to obey, given no choice in their existence. You command them as tools." Palpatine's expression shifted to sadness, so perfectly performed that Thor almost believed it. "A moral burden I carry daily. The clone army was commissioned before my tenure, discovered only when the war began. We inherited a solution to a crisis, Separatist aggression requiring immediate military response. What would you have had me do? Disband them? Leave the Republic defenseless? Give them freedom, give them choice. And if they choose to leave? If this army, our only defense against annihilation, simply walks away?" Palpatine shook his head slowly. "I understand your concerns. They honor you. But leadership requires terrible choices. I must weigh the lives of trillions of Republic citizens against the uncomfortable origins of our defenders." "Uncomfortable?" Thor's voice carried thunder. "You speak of slavery as uncomfortable. I speak of survival," Palpatine countered, his tone sharpening. "You arrive in our galaxy wielding power we cannot comprehend. Judge us by standards we never agreed to, and offer no solutions, only criticism. Tell me, Prince of Asgard, what would you do? How would you protect 30,000 star systems from a hostile military force without an army?" The challenge hung between them. Thor felt the weight of it, the impossible complexity of governing a galaxy-spanning civilization. The competing interests, the lack of perfect solutions. This was nothing like Asgard's relatively simple hierarchy of king, warriors, and people. "I would seek the truth," Thor said finally. "The hidden forces driving this conflict. Someone benefits from endless war, Chancellor. Someone wants clone and droid to die by the millions while systems burn. I would find them." Something flickered across Palpatine's face so brief, Thor almost missed it. Fear? No, not fear. Recognition. As if Thor had just said something the Chancellor hadn't expected him to understand. "An interesting theory," Palpatine said carefully. "The Jedi Council has suggested similar concerns. Master Yoda speaks of darkness, clouding their vision, of larger forces at work." He leaned forward. "If such forces exist, Prince Thor, the Republic needs warriors like you. Powerful, incorruptible, unable to be manipulated by those who twist the Force to their purposes. You want me to serve the Republic." "I want you to serve justice," Palpatine corrected. "However you define it. The Republic is merely the instrument through which we protect trillions of innocent lives. If that aligns with your values, then yes, I want you to stand with us." Thor felt Stormbreaker pulse against his side, as if the weapon itself sensed danger. The Chancellor appeared harmless, even sympathetic, but Thor's instincts, honed across 15 centuries of combat and intrigue, screamed warnings. "I will fight to protect innocence," Thor said, "but I will not pledge allegiance to any faction until I understand the true nature of this war." "Fair enough," Palpatine agreed too easily. "Then let me offer you something: resources, access to intelligence, freedom to investigate these hidden forces you mentioned. Work alongside the Jedi, or independently, if you prefer. Discover the truth. All I ask is that you share what you find." It was a clever trap. Accept. And Thor became entangled in Republic bureaucracy and obligations. Refuse. And he appeared suspicious or ungrateful. Palpatine was a master manipulator, perhaps the best Thor had encountered outside of Loki. "I accept your offer of information access," Thor said carefully. "But I will investigate as I see fit, answer to no one, and share my findings when and if I determine it appropriate." Palpatine's smile returned, and this time Thor caught something genuine in it: dark amusement, like a predator appreciating worthy prey. "As you wish. I'll have my aides provide you clearances. Is there anything else?" "One question," Thor said. "You claim to value democracy and freedom, yet you hold emergency powers that make you effectively a dictator. When will you relinquish them?" The Chancellor's expression turned mournful. "When the war ends. When the separatist threat is eliminated and peace restored. I take no pleasure in this authority, Prince Thor. It weighs on me daily. But until security is achieved, I will not abandon the responsibility the Senate has granted me." "How convenient," Thor observed, "that the war continues indefinitely." For just an instant, Palpatine's mask slipped. His eyes went cold, ancient, and impossibly cruel. Then the grandfatherly concern returned so quickly. Thor questioned whether he'd actually seen it. "I think we understand each other," Palpatine said softly. "You're too perceptive to be easily manipulated, and too powerful to be easily controlled. That makes you dangerous, Prince Thor, to many parties." He stood, moving to show Thor to the door. "Be careful in your investigations. Not everyone welcomes truth as openly as I do." Thor left the office feeling as if he'd just survived a battle, though no weapons had been drawn. In the corridor outside, Obi-Wan waited. "How did it go?" the Jedi asked. "Your Chancellor," Thor said slowly, "is the most dangerous being I've encountered in this galaxy." Obi-Wan's eyebrows rose. "Palpatine? He's a politician, not a warrior." "The worst tyrants rarely are," Thor replied. He looked back at the office doors, sensing something beyond them: that strange, muted Force presence wrapped in shadows. "Tell me honestly, Obi-Wan, how much do the Jedi truly know about the man you've made into an emperor in all but name?" The Jedi's silence was answer enough. That night, aboard the Resolute, Thor stood again at the viewport, but this time he wasn't alone. Through methods he didn't fully understand, he reached out with senses beyond mere sight, following threads of that force energy that connected all things in this galaxy. And there, wrapped in darkness so deep it seemed to devour light itself, he felt it a presence of staggering power, ancient and malevolent, pulling strings that connected Jedi and Sith, Republic and Separatist, clone and droid into one vast web. The spider sat at the center, patient and hungry. Thor didn't know its name, didn't know its face, but he knew with absolute certainty that he'd just met it, spoken with it, and somehow survived the encounter. The question now was whether he could stop it before the web consumed everything. The Jedi Temple archives stretched endlessly, holographic data cascading in streams of blue light. Jocasta Nu, the chief librarian, had initially refused Thor access. Non-Jedi are not permitted until Master Yoda himself intervened. Now Thor stood surrounded by millennia of accumulated knowledge, searching for patterns the Jedi themselves had missed. Looking for something specific, you are? Yoda's voice carried across the silent chamber. The ancient master approached, leaning on his gimmer stick, his eyes knowing and sad. Understanding, Thor replied without turning from the holographic display. He'd been reviewing records of the Clone Wars, beginning the mysterious appearance of the Clone Army, the convenient assassination attempt on Senator Amidala that had sparked the Military Creation Act, the suspiciously perfect timing of Separatist aggression. Master Yoda, who commissioned the Clone Army. Master Sifo Dyas, supposedly, Yoda said, moving to stand beside him. A Jedi. 10 years before the war began. Dead, he is now. Killed before the clone's completion. How convenient, Thor murmured. And no one questioned this? A Jedi secretly commissions a massive army, dies before anyone can ask why, and the Republic simply accepts this gift? Questioned it? We did. Too late? Our questions came. Yoda's ears drooped. Desperate. The Republic was. The Separatists, already attacking. The clones, already grown. Accept them or face annihilation, no real choice, that was. Or exactly the choice someone wanted you to make, Thor said. He gestured to the data streams. I've studied the battles, Master Yoda. The pattern is unmistakable. Every Republic victory pushes Separatists to new territories. Every Separatist victory draws Republic forces deeper into conflict. Neither side can win decisively, yet both have resources to continue indefinitely. Someone maintains this balance deliberately. Sense this, I do, Yoda admitted quietly. Clouded, the Force has become. See the future clearly, we cannot. As if a shroud of darkness falls over everything. He looked up at Thor with ancient eyes. Suspect the Chancellor? You do. I suspect everyone, Thor replied. Palpatine, Dooku, even the Jedi Council. All pieces moving on a board, perhaps not even aware they're being played. Wise, such suspicion may be. But paranoia, it can also breed. Yoda tapped his stick against the floor. Tell me, Prince Thor, if discover the truth you do, what then? The power to act on such knowledge do you have? Thor turned to face the master fully. I have the power to bring lightning and thunder upon any who threaten innocence. But power without wisdom creates only more destruction. That is why I seek understanding first. He paused. The Jedi, you sense this darkness, yet you continue serving the Republic without question. Why? Because serve we must, Yoda said heavily. Imperfect. The Republic is. Corrupt in places. Inefficient always. But darkness unopposed spreads. The Separatists, led by Sith they are. Allow them to conquer unchecked, we cannot. Lesser evil, sometimes we must choose. And if both sides serve the same master, if this entire war is orchestrated by the very darkness you claim to oppose? Yoda's expression turned grim. Then trapped, we all are. But still, fight we must. Protect the innocents, we must. Even if the path leads to darkness, abandon those who need us, we cannot. It was the Jedi philosophy laid bare duty above all, service despite doubt, fighting even when victory seemed impossible. Thor recognized it because he'd lived it. Every Asgardian warrior understood sacrifice for the greater good. But understanding didn't make it less tragic. "Master Yoda," Thor said carefully, "if I discover the source of this manipulation, if I find the spider at the center of the web, will the Jedi Council act? Even if the truth proves uncomfortable, act, we will," Yoda promised. "But proof, you must provide. Suspicions and theories, not enough they are. Evidence, we need. Truth that cannot be denied." Thor nodded. "Then I will find it." He left the archives and made his way through the temple corridors, passing Jedi of various species, all dedicated, all skilled, all completely blind to the trap closing around them. He needed help, but who could he trust? Anakin was too conflicted, torn between duty and personal attachments. Obi-Wan was too loyal to the Council. Ahsoka was too young, despite her perceptiveness. He needed someone who understood shadows, someone who saw through deception naturally. The thought came unbidden, and Thor almost dismissed it. But the more he considered, the more sense it made. He needed to speak with Count Dooku again, not as enemies, but as two beings who both sensed the hidden game being played. It took 3 days to arrange. Secret channels, coded messages, agreements of safe passage. Finally, Thor found himself on a neutral moon, barren, lifeless, far from any strategic interest. A single separatist ship descended, and Dooku emerged alone. "You risk much, contacting me," the Count observed. "The Jedi would view this as betrayal." "I risk more by remaining ignorant," Thor countered. "You told me hidden forces manipulate this war. I believe you. Now tell me what you truly know." Dooku studied him carefully, then spoke. "I am apprentice to Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who orchestrates both sides of this conflict. He commands me even as he commands the Republic through political influence. I lead the Separatists, knowing full well that ultimate victory is not our purpose. Our purpose is chaos, conflict, and the gradual erosion of the Jedi Order." The admission shocked Thor with its directness. "Why tell me this?" "Because I am beginning to suspect that I, too, am being played," Dooku said, and for the first time, Thor heard genuine uncertainty in the Count's voice. "Sidious's plans run deeper than I understood when I became his apprentice. He promised power, promised the destruction of corrupt institutions. But the more I serve him, the more I realize. I fear I've helped create something far worse than what we sought to destroy." "Who is he?" Thor demanded. "This Sidious, where does he hide?" "I don't know," Dooku admitted. "He appears only in holographic form, wrapped in shadows. His voice, his presence through the Force, I can sense his power, but never his location. He is a phantom who commands armies through intermediaries. You're Sith. You serve him. You must know something." "I know he has another plan within his plan," Dooku said. "Something involving the clone army, something he guards even from me. And I know," he hesitated, "I know he sees you as the greatest threat to his designs. A variable he cannot control through the Force. He will move against you soon, Thor. When he does, it will be overwhelming and without mercy." Thor gripped Stormbreaker tightly. "Let him come. I have faced darker foes than shadow-dwelling sorcerers. Have you faced a being who has orchestrated a galaxy-spanning war while appearing to be a harmless politician?" Dooku's eyes bore into his. "Sidious is patient beyond measure. He has spent decades positioning pieces for this moment. You are powerful, but you are also one warrior against a plan that encompasses trillions. Then I will shatter his plan." "How? You don't even know who he is." Thor was silent. Dooku was right. Power meant nothing without a target, and the enemy remained frustratingly invisible. "Help me expose him," Thor said finally. "Whatever you've become, whatever darkness you've embraced, surely you don't want to be a puppet dancing on Sidious's strings." Dooku laughed bitterly. "You think I have a choice? I am Sith. I have murdered in his name, led armies in his service. become everything the Jedi warned against. Even if I wanted to betray Sidious, who would believe me? Who would trust the word of a fallen Jedi? I would, Thor said simply. The Count stared at him, surprise evident on his aristocratic features. You would trust me? After everything I've told you? I trust that you recognize your own chains, Thor replied. I trust that even Sith can tire of serving masters. And I trust that somewhere beneath the darkness, the Jedi you once were still remembers what justice means. He extended his hand. Help me find Sidious. Help me end this war. Not for redemption, I suspect you're far beyond that, but for the satisfaction of seeing your master's plans burn. Dooku looked at Thor's offered hand for a long moment. Then he laughed a genuine sound, surprised and somehow sad. You are either the bravest or most foolish being I've ever encountered. He didn't take the hand. I cannot help you directly. Sidious would sense my betrayal immediately. But he pulled a small data chip from his robes. Investigation records I've compiled, patterns I've noticed, inconsistencies in Sidious's commands. It may help you find him. Thor took the chip. This is a start. It's a death sentence, Dooku corrected. For both of us. But perhaps, he turned back toward his ship. Perhaps some games are worth losing if it means the player falls as well. As the Separatist vessel departed, Thor stood alone on the barren moon, holding secrets that could reshape the war or trigger his destruction. Somewhere in the galaxy, Darth Sidious felt the disturbance, sensed the pieces moving out of alignment. The spider's web trembled, and the spider began to move. The attack came 3 days later, swift and surgical. On a planet Thor had never heard of, Umbara, a world shrouded in perpetual darkness where bioluminescent flora cast everything in eerie twilight. He'd been dispatched with Anakin's battalion to support a Republic offensive against entrenched Separatist forces. The clones fought through shadowed trenches against Umbaran militia whose technology rivaled even the Republic's best. Thor had just destroyed an Umbaran mobile artillery platform when he felt a disturbance in that pervasive force energy, like a knife cutting through fabric. He turned, Stormbreaker already rising, as 3 figures emerged from the darkness. They wore black armor and carried crimson lightsabers. Their presence radiated malevolence, and the force around them writhed with corrupted power. Inquisitors, force-sensitive agents trained to hunt Jedi. But these weren't hunting Jedi. They were hunting him. Prince Thor of Asgard, the lead Inquisitor spoke, his voice mechanically modulated through his helmet. By order of the Emperor's hand, you are to be eliminated. Emperor? Thor's eyes narrowed. Your republic has a chancellor, not an emperor. Semantics, the Inquisitor replied, igniting his spinning double-bladed lightsaber. The weapon whirled like a disk of death. You have interfered with plans centuries in the making. You have corrupted servants with doubt. You have learned truths meant to stay buried. For these crimes, you die. The 3 attacked in perfect coordination. Thor met them with Stormbreaker, lightning exploding from the weapon to illuminate the dark battlefield. The Inquisitors moved like dancers, their spinning blades deflecting his lightning back at him. They were skilled, far more skilled than the average Jedi he'd observed, but they weren't gods. Thor drove forward, Stormbreaker crashing against lightsaber blades with impacts that shook the ground. One Inquisitor attempted to use the Force to crush him. Thor felt invisible pressure squeezing his chest. His armor but Asgardian physiology endured what would have killed lesser beings. He grabbed the Inquisitor's extended hand and pulled, dragging the assassin into range. Stormbreaker's blade edge caught him across the torso, and the Inquisitor fell, smoking. 2 remained. They attacked from opposite sides, forcing Thor to defend against dual angles. Their lightsabers scored his armor, leaving glowing marks, but not penetrating. Thor summoned lightning from the dark sky above, channeling it through Stormbreaker in a massive discharge that sent both Inquisitors tumbling backward. You cannot defeat us. One gasped, struggling to rise. Even if you kill us, Darth Sidious sees all. He knows your every move. Your Separatist contact has already been dealt with. Thor's blood ran cold. Dooku? Dead by now, the Inquisitor confirmed with cruel satisfaction. As will be any who aid you. You stand alone, Asgardian, alone against powers beyond your comprehension. Thor raised Stormbreaker, prepared to finish them, then stopped. These were servants, not masters. Killing them solved nothing. He needed them alive, needed answers, but the decision was taken from him. Both Inquisitors suddenly convulsed, their bodies arching in agony. Lightning, not Thor's lightning, but something far darker, erupted from within them, consuming them from the inside out. They screamed once, then collapsed as smoldering husks. No witnesses. A voice whispered through the force. Everywhere and nowhere. No loose threads. Only certainty. Thor felt the presence then vast, ancient, utterly malevolent. It pressed against his mind like a physical weight, probing, testing, measuring. For just an instant, he glimpsed something in that darkness. A figure in robes, a face both familiar and hidden, eyes that burned yellow with Sith corruption. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, but Thor recognized what he'd seen. Chancellor Palpatine. Not influenced by Sidious, not manipulated by darkness. Was Sidious? The revelation hit like Mjolnir's blow. The grandfatherly politician, the sympathetic chancellor, the man the Jedi trusted with emergency powers and military command, was the Sith Lord orchestrating both sides of the war. The spider at the center of the web. Thor staggered, the weight of understanding nearly overwhelming. How long? How many years had Palpatine played this role? How deeply had he infiltrated the Republic? And if he'd been hiding in plain sight this entire time, right under the Jedi's noses? Now you know. That whispered voice came again, carrying dark amusement. And now you must choose. Prince of Asgard. Share this knowledge and watch everything burn. Attempt to act alone and face powers you cannot imagine. Or a pause, pregnant with malicious promise. Walk away. Return to your 9 realms. This is not your galaxy, not your war, not your responsibility. Thor gripped Stormbreaker until his knuckles whitened. The temptation was real. He could try to reach the Bifrost energy again, could attempt to force his way home through dimensional barriers. He could leave this galaxy to its fate, save himself, return to Asgard and people he understood. But he thought of Rex, of Fives, of Echo, and the countless other clones, fighting without choice. He thought of Ahsoka's idealism, Anakin's hidden doubts, Obi-Wan's blind loyalty. He thought of systems burning while politicians debated, of droids and clones dying by the millions to feed one Sith Lord's appetite for power. I am Thor, son of Odin, he said to the darkness. I do not flee from tyrants. I do not abandon those who cannot defend themselves. And I do not yield to threats, no matter how ancient or powerful. Lightning crackled around him, blue energy that pushed back against the oppressive dark presence. You want me gone, Sidious? You'll have to kill me yourself. The presence withdrew with what might have been laughter. As you wish. But remember, you chose this. Remember that when everything you've tried to protect turns to ash. Thor was alone again on the dark battlefield. Around him, the war continued, clones pushing forward, Umbarans resisting. Artillery fire illuminating the perpetual twilight. They had no idea that the greatest threat to the galaxy stood in an office on Coruscant, wearing the face of their beloved Chancellor. He needed to tell someone, needed to warn the Jedi Council. But who would believe him? He had no proof beyond a vision glimpsed through Sith corruption, a feeling, an intuition. Palpatine had spent years establishing his trusted persona. Thor had been in this galaxy mere weeks. A clone commander approached, his armor marked with the 501st designation. Sir, are you all right? We saw the lightning. Thought you might be under attack. I was, Thor said quietly. He looked toward the sky, toward Coruscant light years away, where a Sith Lord sat in power's highest seat, patient and perfect in his deception. Thor had faced frost giants and dark elves, had fought Thanos and the armies of hell. But this enemy was different. This enemy controlled governments, commanded armies, and hid behind legitimacy. How did one fight a tyrant that the galaxy itself had willingly empowered? Anakin approached through the darkness, lightsaber still ignited. Thor? What happened here? He saw the scorched remains of the Inquisitors. Who were they? Thor made a decision. Not the Council. They were too invested in the system, too blind to Palpatine's deception. But Anakin. Anakin questioned. Anakin doubted. Anakin had experienced slavery and might understand what the clones truly were. Anakin, Thor said carefully, how much do you trust your Chancellor? The young Jedi's expression shifted immediately, becoming guarded. Why do you ask? Because I believe he is not what he appears. Because I believe the Jedi Council has been deceived by a master manipulator who hides in plain sight. Thor stepped closer, his voice urgent. Because I believe Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious. Anakin stared at him for a long moment. Then his hand moved to his lightsaber hilt. That's treason, Anakin said quietly, dangerously. Accusing the Chancellor of being a Sith Lord, based on what? Feelings? Suspicions? I thought you were better than conspiracy theories. Thor saw it, then saw how deeply Palpatine's hooks were already embedded. Anakin defended the Chancellor reflexively, emotionally, beyond mere loyalty. Whatever relationship Palpatine had cultivated with the young Jedi ran deeper than Thor had realized. Listen to me, Thor began. No, Anakin interrupted, his scar-marked face hard in the bioluminescent light. You listen. I've watched you for weeks, questioning everything, trusting nothing, seeing conspiracies everywhere. Maybe you're right that the war is complicated. Maybe you're right that the clones deserve better. But accusing the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, the man who's held this galaxy together during its darkest hour of being the enemy? Anakin's lightsaber remained unignited, but his stance was combat-ready. That's too far. That's dangerous. Thor realized his mistake. Too fast. Too direct. He'd underestimated how thoroughly Sidious had prepared for this moment. How carefully he'd positioned his pieces. If even Anakin troubled, questioning Anakin rejected the truth this firmly, how would the Council react? You're right, Thor said, backing down strategically. I spoke hastily. The battle, the attack, it's clouded my judgment. Forget I said anything. But Anakin's expression remained suspicious. Will you forget it? Or will you keep pursuing this insanity? I will do what I believe is right, Thor said simply. As will you. The two warriors stood in tense silence, the war raging around them, both knowing that something fundamental had shifted. They'd been allies, perhaps even friends. Now they stood on opposite sides of a truth that couldn't be unsaid. Don't make me choose between you and the Republic, Anakin said quietly. Please, Thor. Whatever you think you know, whatever you believe, don't force that choice. Thor looked at the young Jedi, so powerful, so skilled, so tragically blind, and saw the future splitting before them like forked lightning. One path led to truth exposed, Sidious revealed, and perhaps hope for the galaxy. The other led to darkness, betrayal, and the fall of everything the Jedi represented. And Anakin Skywalker stood at the crossroads, not knowing he'd already chosen his path long ago. I hope I never have to, Thor said. But he knew, with the certainty of a god who'd lived 15 centuries, that hope and reality rarely aligned. The Resolute hung in orbit above Coruscant, but Thor wasn't aboard. He stood instead on the temple steps as night fell over the city planet, waiting. The Jedi Council had summoned him. Anakin's report had seen to that. Now he would face judgment from those who couldn't see the true threat. Master Windu emerged first, his expression carved from stone. Behind him came Obi-Wan, Yoda, and 3 other council members. They formed a semicircle around Thor, their presence commanding but not hostile. Not yet. Serious allegations, Anakin reported, Yoda said, his ancient eyes searching Thor's face. Claim you do that the Chancellor is Darth Sidious. Evidence of this, have you? Thor had spent 3 sleepless nights wrestling with this moment. He could show them Dooku's data chip, except Dooku was dead, killed before he could corroborate anything. He could describe his vision on Umbara, except visions could be Sith deceptions. He could explain the patterns, the manipulation, the impossibly perfect orchestration, except conspiracy without proof was madness. "I have certainty," Thor said finally. "I felt his presence. I saw through his mask. Palpatine is Sidious. The war, the emergency powers, the clone army, all of it serves his ascension to absolute power." "You felt his presence," Mace repeated, skepticism heavy in his voice. "You, who aren't even force-sensitive in any way we understand. You expect us to arrest the Supreme Chancellor based on feelings? Based on truth," Thor insisted. "Master Yoda, you yourself said darkness clouds the Force, that you cannot see clearly. Why? Because Sidious stands at the center of your vision, hiding in plain sight. He is the shroud." Obi-Wan stepped forward, his expression pained. "Thor, I've defended you to the Council. I've argued that your outsider perspective offers valuable insights. But this," he shook his head, "Palpatine has served the Republic faithfully for years. He's taken on emergency powers reluctantly, only as the Senate granted them. He's supported the Jedi Order completely. What you're suggesting is that a Sith Lord has perfectly positioned himself to destroy everything you represent," Thor finished. "And you cannot see it because you've been conditioned not to look. How many meetings has Anakin had with the Chancellor alone? How much influence does Palpatine have over your most powerful Jedi? Why does he always know exactly what to say, exactly how to position himself beyond suspicion?" "Enough," Mace commanded. "You're not Jedi. You don't understand the Force or how we sense darkness. If Palpatine were Sith, we would know. Would you?" Thor challenged. "You didn't sense the clone army's true purpose. You didn't sense Dooku's fall until it was complete. You didn't sense the war itself being orchestrated. Your connection to the Force makes you powerful, but it also makes you blind to threats that operate outside your paradigm." Yoda's ears drooped. Harsh words. These are, but unwise. To completely dismiss them, investigate. Perhaps we should investigate the Supreme Chancellor, Mace interrupted. "Based on the accusations of someone who's been in our galaxy less than 2 months? Someone who's already met secretly with Count Dooku?" He turned sharp eyes on Thor. "Yes, we know about that. Our intelligence networks are more thorough than you realized." Thor felt the trap closing. Every move he'd made to uncover the truth had been observed, recorded, and now used against him. Sidious had planned even for this. "If you know about my meeting with Dooku," Thor said carefully, "then you know he confirmed Sidious exists. He confirmed the war is orchestrated. He told you what you wanted to hear," Obi-Wan said. "Dooku was a master manipulator. He played on your doubts about the Republic, fed your suspicions, turned you against the very people trying to help you. Or he told me truths the Jedi are too frightened to hear," Thor countered. The temperature on the temple steps seemed to drop. Mace's hand moved toward his lightsaber hilt, not threatening, but ready. "You've become a liability, Thor," the Jedi Master said flatly. "Your presence destabilizes our operations. Your constant questioning undermines clone morale. Your secret meetings with separatist leaders constitute treason. And now you make wild accusations against the head of our government." He paused. "The Council has decided. You're to be escorted off Coruscant. You'll be transported to a neutral system where you can await the Bifrost's return or find your own way home." "You're exiling me," Thor said, understanding dawning, "removing the one person who sees the truth." "We're protecting the Republic from a dangerous variable," Mace corrected. "You've done some good here. You've saved lives. But your time in our galaxy is over." Thor looked at each of them. Mace, rigid with certainty. Obi-Wan, conflicted but loyal. Yoda, ancient and sad. Perhaps sensing something but unwilling to act on suspicion alone. They were good people, noble warriors, dedicated to justice, and they were utterly blind. When Palpatine reveals himself, Thor said quietly, when he executes whatever final plan he has prepared, when the clones turn on you and the Republic burns, remember this moment. Remember that I tried to warn you. If such a day comes, Yoda said softly, remember you. We will. But act on fear and suspicion alone. The Jedi cannot. Evidence and certainty. We require. Have this. You do not. Thor knew further argument was futile. He'd gambled and lost. Sidious had positioned his pieces too perfectly, cultivated too much trust, isolated Thor too effectively. The god of thunder had power enough to level cities, but power meant nothing against an enemy who controlled the very institutions meant to stop him. I will leave Coruscant, Thor said finally, but I will not leave this galaxy, not while innocents suffer and tyrants scheme. That is your choice, Mace acknowledged. But if you interfere with Republic operations again, if you contact separatist forces, if you make any move we consider threatening, we will stop you. Am I clear? Hinfleck, perfectly. Thor gripped Stormbreaker, considering for one wild moment whether he should force the issue now. He could storm the Chancellor's office, could drag Palpatine before the Council in chains. But what then? Sidious would simply claim persecution, would turn the moment to his advantage. The truth required revelation, not force. He descended the temple steps, aware of Jedi eyes tracking his every movement. At the base, Captain Rex waited with a squad of clone troopers. Sir, Rex said uncomfortably, we've been ordered to escort you to a transport. Thor looked at the clones, men he'd fought beside, men he'd tried to help see their own value. They wore expressions of confusion and regret, caught between orders and personal loyalty. It's all right, Rex, Thor said. I understand. You're following orders. It's what you were made for, after all. The words struck like a blow. Rex's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The transport lifted off, as dawn broke over Coruscant's endless cityscape. Thor watched the temple recede, watched the Senate building where Sidious sat in perfect safety, watched a galaxy stumbling blindly toward catastrophe. But exile wasn't defeat. Thor had fought in 9 realms and knew that some battles couldn't be won with direct confrontation. If the Jedi wouldn't listen, if the Republic couldn't see, then he would have to find another way, other allies, other resources. Somewhere in this vast galaxy, there had to be those who would hear truth when spoken. His communicator chimed a frequency he didn't recognize. When he answered, a hologram appeared. Not separatist, not Republic, something else entirely. Prince Thor, a woman's voice spoke. She wore armor that reminded him of Mandalorian design, but older, bearing symbols he didn't recognize. I am Bo-Katan Kryze. I've been watching your efforts to expose the Chancellor. You've failed with the Jedi, but there are others who might listen. Warriors who value truth over politics. Mandalorians, Thor identified. Among others, the clone army's origins trouble many who aren't blinded by Republic loyalty. If you truly believe Palpatine is Sith. She paused. Then perhaps it's time to build an alliance outside the corrupt system. An alliance that can act when the Jedi cannot, Thor considered. It was dangerous, potentially catastrophic. Forming a coalition against the Republic could trigger the very chaos Sidious wanted. But doing nothing guaranteed disaster. Tell me more, he said. As the transport carried him away from Coruscant, away from Jedi blindness and Sith machinations, Thor began planning. Not retreat, not surrender, but a different kind of war, one fought in shadows and whispers, gathering those who saw clearly, preparing for the moment when truth could no longer be denied. Sidious thought he'd won. Thought he'd isolated his enemy and secured his position, but the God of Thunder had survived millennia by knowing when to strike and when to wait. The storm was coming. It would simply arrive from a direction the Sith Lord never expected. In his Senate office, Palpatine felt the Asgardian leave Coruscant and smiled. The variable had been managed. The Jedi remained blind. The clones remained loyal. And his grand design proceeded exactly as foreseen. Almost, but in the Force's deepest currents, something shifted, something even Sidious couldn't fully sense or control. Thor's presence had changed the galaxy in subtle ways, planted seeds of doubt in minds previously certain, shown clones and Jedi alike that the war they fought might not be what they believed. Whether those seeds would grow into salvation or catastrophe, only time would reveal. The Clone Wars continued. But now, somewhere in the Outer Rim, a new storm was gathering. The galaxy would remember Thor's arrival in fragments and legends, the warrior god who fell from rainbow light, who questioned what others accepted, who saw truths too dangerous to acknowledge. History, written by those who survived what came after, would debate whether his presence helped or hindered, whether his warnings saved lives or simply accelerated the inevitable. In the months following his exile from Coruscant, Thor became something the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia, a true, independent force. He gathered those who questioned, Mandalorian warriors disturbed by the clone army's origins, Republic senators who saw Palpatine's power accumulation as tyranny in waiting, even disillusioned separatists who recognized their cause had been hijacked. They called themselves the Storm Guard, and they prepared for the darkness they all sensed approaching. When Order 66 finally came, when Palpatine revealed himself and the clone troopers turned on their Jedi commanders, Thor's warnings echoed in the minds of those few who survived. Master Yoda, fleeing the temple's burning halls, remembered the Asgardian's words, "Remember that I tried to warn you." Obi-Wan, standing over Anakin's burning body on Mustafar, understood too late what Thor had seen in Palpatine's eyes. But Thor's legacy wasn't written in what he prevented. The Force and fate moved in currents even gods couldn't fully redirect. His legacy was written in who survived. Captain Rex, exposed to Thor's questions about choice and purpose, resisted his programming long enough to remove his inhibitor chip. Other clones, hearing whispers of the warrior who'd called them more than weapons, began their own journeys toward independence. The rebellion that would eventually rise against the Empire found its earliest members among those Thor had touched with dangerous ideas about freedom and self-determination. On a nameless moon in the Outer Rim, Thor stood watching stars he'd once traveled between with purpose. He'd failed to prevent catastrophe, failed to convince the Jedi, failed to stop Sidious before transformation into Emperor. But failure, he'd learned across 1,500 years, was never final. It was merely the prelude to different victory. Stormbreaker pulsed in his hand, and Thor felt something a pull, a whisper of rainbow light reaching across dimensional barriers. The Bifrost, searching for him, finally finding its lost traveler. He could go home now, could return to Asgard, to the Nine Realms, to battles he understood against enemies he could see. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Rex's face, asking what he'd choose if he could choose. He saw Ahsoka's idealism confronting uncomfortable truths. He saw systems burning while tyrants consolidated power. He saw the faces of trillions who would suffer under the Empire's rule, who would live and die without ever knowing that someone had tried to warn their protectors before darkness fell. Thor opened his eyes and turned away from the Bifrost's call. "Not yet," he said to the thunder rolling through the Force itself. The rainbow light faded, and Thor remained. In the newly declared Galactic Empire, Emperor Palpatine sensed the Asgardian's choice and frowned. The variable remained. The storm hadn't dissipated, and somewhere in the Force's infinite complexity, threads of fate rewove themselves around this outsider who refused to leave. The Clone Wars had ended, the Empire had risen, the Jedi had fallen. But Thor, son of Odin, Prince of Asgard and wielder of storms, stood ready for the next battle, the longer war, the harder fight, the rebellion that would take not months but years, not armies but hope. He'd arrived in this galaxy by accident. He would leave it whenever that day came by choice. And until then, wherever tyrants rose and innocents suffered, lightning would answer, thunder would echo, and the Empire would learn that some storms cannot be silenced, cannot be exiled, and cannot be defeated by mere politics or power. Thor's journey through the Clone Wars, exposed the fundamental tragedy at the heart of Star Wars' greatest conflict, that good people, noble intentions, and powerful warriors meant nothing against an enemy who controlled the narrative itself. Palpatine won not through superior force, but through superior positioning, and Thor's outside perspective couldn't overcome institutional blindness. Yet, his impact remained. Seeds planted in minds previously certain. Questions asked that couldn't be unasked. Warriors shown glimpses of what they could be beyond their programming. When the Empire rose and the rebellion formed, Thor's influence would echo through those who remembered that someone had seen clearly and spoken truth, even when no one would listen. The god of thunder had faced his greatest challenge. Not beings he could strike with lightning, but systems too entrenched to topple, allies too blind to save, and an enemy too perfectly concealed to expose. His victory wasn't in preventing catastrophe, but in ensuring that when darkness fell, some lights remained burning. Is greater than, may the Force be with you. More stories await.